Hello everyone, it's July 15th, 2014. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday. And in today's episode, I'm going to finally finish my look at this piece that I learned as variations on a theme of Mozart, but was actually written by a composer called Dalvimare, and the theme may not have been Mozart at all. But lovely piece, wonderful piece. And we're going to look at Variation 5 and Variation 6. So I'm going to start by trying to play you those two variations. So there they are. And let's start by talking about Variation 5. And I'm mentioning that in this episode, I'm going to get a little bit lazy. I'm not going to put the music up, but that's in part because there's not too much stuff, I hope, that really requires me pointing it out on the music. So hopefully, if you have the music, you can follow along, and hopefully that will be clear. So Variation 5, and again, it's interesting, this difference between this version, original version, or I assume it's the original version, and the version that I learned, the Odette Dentu arrangement. And in this case, in Variation 5, she does something quite nice in terms of taking a few notes in the left hand, a few notes that were written for the right hand. She takes them in the left hand, and it ends up making everything a little bit easier. But in this, you'll see that he's actually got, with harmonics for the left hand, all these notes. And I kind of like that. So you could play it with just normal notes, and then you can take a few with, for example, taking this low C in the third bar of that first line. The middle C maybe makes it a little bit easier. But I would say experiment with those harmonics. And if you learned it the other way, hey, try it out with the harmonics and see what you think. Etc. Now you'll notice that this one low C on the wire string, I couldn't get that harmonic to sound. And I'm not actually aware of what exactly the strings would have been like in Dalvimare's time, whether this was a realistic note to have as a harmonic. I mean, I guess we get a slightly different sound, But it's possible, we could just play that as a normal note. That would sound quite nice as well. So something just to be aware of, that maybe this one doesn't work. But I think, even that first wire, that wire G, we can still get it to sound reasonably well. And then, so the big thing then in this piece is, I think, the quality, right? So we've had the opening theme, which is quite grandiose and march-like, and then all these other variations have been pretty fast on the whole, and some of them, just as fast as we can get them type of thing. And so finally here, and the last variation is quite fast as well, so finally with this fifth variation, we finally get a little bit of a respite. It's marked andante. There's 16th notes, but again, 16th notes really don't mean anything. It's not like 16th notes are always fast. It's all relative, right? Depending on what the tempo you're taking. And so I think we want this one to be a little bit of a break, so that rather, sometimes we want a quality of moving forward and anticipation and excitement, even if it's not particularly fast. So, we could have sorry, messed up there, but anyway, that sense of kind of crescendo, and push. But in this case, I think, we could take that same approximate tempo, but what we're looking for is a sense of, we can just relax in this piece and just sit back and enjoy these nice sounds, and not a sense of go, go, go. So that And so, for example, here, we're feeling quite lazy, rather than that's a sense of anticipation of driving forward, as opposed to kind of living on the end of the beat and not pushing the beat, and just giving it that sense of relaxation. So, and spots to kind of just take a little bit extra time if you can. Find some spots and again, just give this a very peaceful quality. The middle half, of course, again has that and then repeats. So, the second time you might think about backing it off just a little bit. But basically, there you go. This is a spot to, I think, relax and enjoy hearing this theme without a sense of push. Anyway. So then let's look at, actually, one last thing, I guess, just talking about left-hand harmonics here. And this is actually quite a bad angle, but just thinking about that kind of round palm and movement with the hand as a whole. Like normally we're thinking about thumb and fingers, but in this case, we're kind of keeping the hand shape and then twisting the wrist to try or twisting the hand a little bit to try and get a nice sound. So the thumb isn't actually doing a lot of work. It's more just kind of staying in place and trying to stay as relaxed as possible throughout there. So, this joint, not in, but out. What's a better angle for that? So, is that, yeah, so not in, but out a little bit, and just this shape, and then nice harmonics. Okay, so now variation, and this is marked 4, but of course we've already had variation 4. It's variation 6. It's all about this, and it's interesting, right? Because variation 4 is technically the most demanding piece. It demands the most of one's technique. But if you're comfortable with this kind of pattern, then it's actually kind of easy to read through. Whereas, for example, variation 2, a lot harder to sight read, but maybe not quite as difficult in terms of the technique. So in this case, we always get, left hand note. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you want to work on making that as comfortable as possible. So you can, of course, just go back and forth and do work on that up, down, up, down, up, down. But you can also just work on this, in which case the difficult part, right, is the turnaround at the top. So here's some ways to approach that. First, going up, that should just be like a broken chord, right? Similar to a broken chord, we're used to that. We are, of course, trying to make every note even, so it's possible that maybe you can break a chord, but it's not completely even, so just listen for... Can we play those 4 notes going up and come off? And have that be perfectly even. Step 1. Now how about doing it down, starting with a thumb? This is probably going to feel harder and less comfortable because we get practice breaking chords going up. We don't typically get any practice going down. But there's no reason, right? There's no physical reason why, if we can do this, we should be able to do this. It's just a matter of practice and time. So, feeling each finger, listening for evenness, and trying to get that as good as your upward breaks. Then, of course, there's that turnaround. The fact that we don't just get to go up and come off. We have to immediately replace these fingers. So, one thing you can try is breaking it down. Let's say we've played 4 and 3, right? No worries. That should be, regardless of what we do next, that should be pretty easy. So we're going to start with just 2 and 1. We're going to play 2. And now we're going to open up the hand and place all 3 of these notes. In fact, we could practice it by placing all 3 of these notes. This chord that we're going to play, and then just replace it. The fingers just go right back to where they started. And you're wanting to, we don't want to place it like this. We don't want to build up, 2, 3, 4. We want to see these fingers working as a unit. And that's why, when we close, if we're just playing 2, we open all the fingers with 2 and we close all of them. So we don't let the fingers stay in the palm. We want to open them as a unit. Open them as a unit and close them as a unit. Of course, that helps with relaxation, but it also means that we're building that idea that we can just place these fingers as one. It's just one action to find all 3 of those notes rather than a sense of one finger, another finger, which is going to be way too slow, right? So we can... Or... And, of course, rather than a big full close, which is great, but in this, because it's going to be so fast, we're looking for just that abbreviated motion, slight kind of pushing down, closing motion, and then, so everything's relaxed, you're not holding these up ready to get, they're just, everything's relaxed. Small motion, open up, find the notes. Great. And that's what we're going to do, right? As soon as we play 2, we're going to replace. And that means all these fingers are there once the thumb is played, ready to go down. can also, of course, break that down to just practice 2-1-2. Can you do that? Well, then if we're thinking of these fingers being a unit, so that's one way to kind of approach that. And of course, you can, in this piece, you can do some dotted rhythms if you want. And the opposite. Again, always a fine way to work on building evenness, so that we're exaggerating a difference, right? We're exaggerating having a longer break between some of the fingers. And then when we go to play, we're trying to have it be perfectly even. We don't, we want to be aware of and we want to eliminate any tendency to hang up on a particular finger that everything's going to be perfectly even. And here's this one spot where the pattern changes, where we get octave, 4-3-1, octave. And again, we want to kind of be thinking there of one unit, that we don't want to think left and then right and left and right. We want to make sure that's just one 30-second note after another. One other note is on the third line of this variation, you can see the sort of the brackets enclosed where we were repeating. It's maybe not perfectly clear, but we're going to do this. And we'll go back and repeat. Etc. So there you have it. One final thing to think about on these, and that is that especially if you have shorter fingers, you want to be comfortable with the fourth finger, right? So one of the things just to be aware of is where your hand is. That if the hand is too far towards you, this way, that fourth finger is going to have a really hard time getting any purchase on the bottom string, right? It's going to be really uncomfortable. So we want to make sure that that hand is far enough away from us that the fourth finger really gets a nice solid grip on the string. And depending on the size of your hands, like for me, say a big grip like this, I might be a little bit further forward than would be comfortable to play one with. I might even, have to almost maybe delay placing the thumb, but I would certainly have a reasonable amount of movement with my hand coming from the bottom, starting away from me, coming towards me and moving away from me. So for when I'm here in this, root C chord, say, there's not a lot of movement. There's a little bit of movement, and I don't know if you can see at this angle, but just being aware of the fact that it's okay to have this hand move away from you and towards you. Try not to let the wrist pop up, right? Like we don't want to get this as we move away from ourselves. But but we can have just a little bit of leeway to make sure that the fourth finger is comfortable, right? That we don't feel like we're reaching out with that fourth finger and can barely touch the string. Fourth finger is comfortable, and the thumb is in a comfortable position when we get to the thumb. So just, you don't want a lot of movement because that's wasted energy, can slow you down, but you don't want to feel like you're stuck in place, and you want to give yourself the amount of movement that will let you play that comfortably. So there you have it, the 5th and 6th variations on this air and variations by Dalvimare. So hope you've enjoyed watching throughout this piece, and I'm going to try to be back again next week with something new. See you in a week. Cheers.